So kind of dovetailing off that, let's get into some stock talk, and I'm not talking about the NASDAQ, but just the temperature of Nebraska players this spring, guys who've made a move. We talk about that often going into a season. Who needs to make a move? Who are some guys that you've heard that's kind of perked up your attention as far as someone who's maybe changed their standing on the team and how you see them based on comments we've heard?
I think Quentin Ives has put himself in position to be the number 2 back. I think I already feel and know that Mekhi Nelson is someone they want to keep in the program and keep bringing him along, that they really like him, and I think he'll play next year quite a bit. I think, Elijah Pritchett has come in and done what they certainly hoped he would do as an offensive lineman, and they needed him to do that. Like, they needed him to come in and be the player that they hoped he could be, and it sounds like that's what he's doing. I don't think there's any surprise about Rocco Spindler, so I don't know that there's anything there.
Right.
So I think there's a stock up there. I liked what I saw out of Gabe Moore, but we'll see. He's young, and he's probably not going to play a ton in his first year here. So is he ready to root in and develop? I thought Elijah Judy looked good frame-wise and size-wise. I think Keona Davis is a real talent. He probably still needs to put on a little bit of weight, but he's going to be an interesting player, Evan, because he's a pass rusher body. He's got a great frame to be a pass rusher. Is he going to be a guy that, he's not a jack, though. Technically, he's on a defensive line, and would he be better as a jack? Can he become a drop guy that can, drop into coverage? Because he looks like a Broderick Thomas type player, and Broderick Thomas was a linebacker in the NFL, and he was what you call a rush end at Nebraska in a 50 defense. He was basically the overhang of a 3-4, right? So you have a true outside linebacker, and Keona Davis has got an incredible frame. I'll be curious to see if he can really play inside the tackle box. Again, your Broderick Thomases of the world were hanging out outside it. I always think of Broderick Thomas was like the ideal of that rush end back when they played the 50, and Neil Smith and Danny Noonan were the ideal of the tackles, and then the ideal middle guard was, I don't even know. I don't have a good enough memory to be able to say. Kevin Raymaker, it was kind of a short, squatty guy that was tough in the middle, and as time went on, Steve Warren was an incredible nose guard or nose tackle, so maybe somebody like that. But Davis has a rush end body, I guess. So I'll be curious to see what they do there. Williams Nwaneri, I think, has had an okay camp, but again, it's going to take him some time to acclimate. I think they feel good about their tight ends that are down the list that we don't talk about. Mm-hmm. And again, I think Heinrich Harburg has got a future in the NFL at tight end. People must be patient.
Right.
Must be patient with Heinrich.
That's been made clear the last few weeks.
Got to be patient with him, because I do think they have a vision for how they want to use the tight end in a Dana Holgorsen / power offense, and it's just gonna take a little bit of time. The passes that they were throwing to Carter Nelson and Thomas Fidone during the season last year under the Satterfield regime are probably going to go to running backs or Janiron Bonner or Ja'Cory Barney in a Holgorsen offense. So what your tight ends become in a Holgorsen offense is they got to block, and then they're going to be leak guys that leak out, and then they're going to get vertical. And Heinrich's got to get open. Heinrich can do all the things. He's got to get open, and he's got to get open down the field, and then he's got to make plays on the ball and all the rest. So be careful there to say he's going to have 40 grabs for 460 yards. I've already heard prognostications like that, and I'm like, we're always doing that, and I feel like you got to be thoughtful and just say, if he gets 20 grabs and they're the right 20 grabs and there's 14 of them are in the back half of the season, that's what you want. He will figure his NFL career out, and he'll be in the NFL, but you don't need to, George Kittle wasn't a 70 catch guy at Iowa. It's okay. So I think that's something that people have gotten a little over their skis about. They need to be patient there. Obviously, if John Butler's talking about the linebackers, they must be better than we were thinking. 3 deep, there must be some guys there that he really likes. So
I'll give you a few more. I thought Justin Evans maybe has been one of the biggest risers of spring ball. We were talking about that being a battle at center with Sam Sledge, and we got some straight talk from Dana Holgerson saying that it's Evans who's doing a great job, and it said there's a drop off after that at this point. So, I mean, this is a guy who's been a multi-year starter, left guard, so he's sliding over to center. Apparently, he's making a transition as a vocal guy, a leader. He's not somebody, I believe, that's done any interviews since he's been at Nebraska. I talked to him when he was a recruit, but he's been a very quiet guy. Sounds like he's coming out of his shell, I guess, in that way to be.
They all kind of take after their coach.
Sure, yeah.
Their coaches, although Donovan Raiola's interview was maybe the best of all the position coaches this spring, with the exception of Holgerson.
Sure.
He's
come a long way.
He was excellent
at Nebraska, yes.
So I'm curious if the players are going to follow suit. But otherwise, they're kind of quiet. Like they don't really want to broadcast themselves. Now, Rocco Spindler is a raconteur. So he is going to be kind of the spokesman for the group, I think. Mm-hmm. He's been here for a couple of months, and that guy can talk for a half hour.
He could, and be pretty interesting, too. Riley Van Poppel's another guy I'd put on there, and we knew that he was sort of ascending into that next role anyway. But to hear him talk and to see the physical gains he's made, he looks.
We thought Ty Robinson was big.
That's right. I mean he's just thick.
Oh yeah.
And
big time player.
I was going back and looking at some of his recruiting process stuff, and Nebraska told him, even all the way back to the Scott Frost staff, saying, we envision you being kind of that Ty Robinson guy eventually. And now here he is in that role, and he looks the part, and he's thoughtful like Ty, and I think he's got sort of an inner fire to him like Ty did, and just like that's a guy, again, that we just kind of assume was going to take that next step, but it really looks obvious that he probably is, and
he's
going to be that
a
next
first
leader of
or
that
second
defensive
round
line.
draft pick.
Yeah, really impressive.
Nebraska had to hold off Michigan to get him. Mm-hmm. And you see what Michigan does with its defensive tackles and where they go in the draft. This kid's very similar. I'm not saying Mason Graham is actually sort of an oddly shaped and sized player. He's going to go in the first round, I think. I would say that Riley Van Poppel has more potential. And I know what I'm saying. Mason Graham's a very good player at Michigan, but I think Van Poppel's got at least that much potential. And Graham's a little undersized. Van Poppel is not. Mm-hmm. He's going to be big time. Big time. And Williams Nwaneri can be big time. You know, he just needs time. He needs time in the program. He needs time, in my opinion, a better defense than Missouri has provided. I'm not trying to be critical of Missouri. Missouri's had a great program last couple of years. I just don't think that what Missouri's trying to do is similar to what Nebraska's trying to do and how it fits the player. And then that other one's Keona Davis. Like, are they going to keep him as a tackle?
Yeah,
I just don't know. Because he looks like he could be one hell of a pass rusher right off the edge every time, you know. So
one more for you, and this is more positional, but it feels like the receivers are trending up. We mentioned Mosey and Mills, and obviously Dane Key has been that guy that Nebraska hoped he would be, and Ja'Cory Barney's doing his thing. And the thing about the receivers, it feels like we've done this at Nebraska a lot over the last 7 or 8 years, where it's been a position with so much turnover in terms of the talent, in terms of the coaches, and there's usually a guy, and lately it's been a portal guy the last 4 or 5 years, but it seems like there's more depth than they've had, and the Stars maybe would say that it's similar to what they've had in the past, but I'm trying not to get caught up in the spring comments, but it feels like that position's taking a step to where it can be have a little bit more depth, and to where maybe the guys who are the most talented are also the guys who they can trust to stay on the field because they know the plays for a long drive. Do you agree with that? Do you think, is that a position that's on the rise, or are we kind of getting caught up in the same thing that we have the last few years?
I think it's on the rise. I think that the coaching is probably better, and then your offensive coordinator knows receiver play really, really well. And everywhere he's been, there's been great receiver play. And so one of the things about Holgerson is his offenses tend to attract and develop and produce really good receivers. And so I do feel like that system is going to get better. If you look at the work that he did everywhere he's been, pretty much. Like, it just doesn't make any difference where he's been. He's produced really good receivers. And so I do think that's going to happen here a little bit more than it has. I was just reflecting on, prior to Holgerson's arrival, your offensive coordinator was a tight ends coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the receivers coach was a backup quarterback in college at Baylor. Not saying he isn't good at his job, but he's 26. Mm-hmm. Now you have a multi-year power conference coach in DeKeel Schwartz who knows exactly what the coordinator wants, who himself was a college receiver and also coached receivers in college, and knows that position within his offense really well. I think you've gotten ahead of the game. I think they've made some strides, and so that's helpful. And I think that's going to be really important for them going forward. Is you've got to be able to have guys that know what they want and know how to coach it and know how to evaluate. Mickey Joseph knew how to evaluate. He did,
no doubt.
And there's no question that Mickey Joseph's really good at his job, but he was only here for 1 year. And the 1 year he was here, they had Trey Palmer and Marcus Washington, and those guys were good. They were good, and Janiron Bonner's, probably would have been a different receiver under Mickey Joseph. But, Joseph was only here 1 year. So, he wasn't here long enough. Joseph's predecessor was Matt Lubick. And to be clear, I think Matt Lubick knows a lot about football and a lot about offense. And I thought he designed some good things in 2021. I don't know that he reached the receivers, per se. Mm-hmm. And then Walters was only here the 2 years. And then before that, I do think Keith Williams was really good, but he also was not retained by Scott's staff. Hindsight being 2020, probably should have retained him. That's what I'd have done. I would have retained him and kept him here and just had Troy call the plays or whatever they wanted him to do, but that's not the way they wanted to go. Now I think they've got a good combination.